Good morning and welcome to Mindset Mondays with DTK. This is episode number 165 in an ongoing series of live broadcasts designed for folk who have already figured out that the best way to get better at doing what they do is to focus on getting better at being who they be. I've had a lot of conversations recently with folks who are trying to understand how I see it, and had an interesting analogy that I've been using, and then I'll get to today's quote. Interesting analogy that I've been using, the idea of when Michelangelo was asked how he carved such exquisite figures, his response was, I don't. I merely free the figure from the stone. And what I realized is the beauty of the work that I get to do is work with clients while they chip away everything that isn't them, isn't true, isn't real, to free themselves from the stone of that clutter so that they can live, love, and lead from there. So that's something that's been very, very current for me. And the other thing that's been very current for me is it's my birthday tomorrow. And so that's probably why this quote was so, I think, appropriate for today. And what became current for me was the idea of moving into that elder space or just getting older. And what I realize is, other than the conflagration that my birthday cake is beginning to look like, age makes absolutely no promise, just more candles. One more trip around the sun, one more candle. Age marches on regardless of whether we choose for it to or not, regardless of our desire. But knowledge, serenity, wisdom, peace of mind, age gives no guarantee of their progression. All progress on those fronts towards transformation is entirely up to me. Clearly, up to you as well. That's the whole point of this, that the journey is ours and our responsibility. And Kathleen Dowling Singh says, whatever transformative experience we have of aging is dependent upon our own intention. It's about as plain as it gets. It's entirely up to us. Whatever transformative experience we have of aging is dependent on our intention. Intention is everything. Now look, this isn't a milestone birthday. This isn't a 5 or a 0. So there's nothing pressing about it. In fact, Elaine keeps asking me what I want to do for my birthday, and my response has been, I don't. I feel like at 56, I want to celebrate the 5s and the 0s. I don't really care about the numbers in between. Right? Anyway. But I think that's it. I think it's the birthday itself that has this quote being current, which what I'm learning about learning and what I'm learning about mastery and what's getting clear is every step I take down the rabbit hole, my knowing of how deep the rabbit hole goes increases. That's the beauty of mastery. When I was a cocksure, chest-thumping, bravado-infused 20-year-old and 25-year-old and 30-year-old and 35 years old, I knew that I could reach mastery. I knew that I could master something. And it's fascinating as I look at and I read more about the grandmasters in chess. The one thing they're clear of is there is no mastering chess. Grandmaster is a label that goes with the level of play, but there is always more to learn. There is always more mastery to acquire. There is always more movement towards the ever elusive mastery. So I set my intention on a destination I mean, not on the destination, but rather that end state, that wise elder or sage, because that's not a pinpoint, that's a state. In elderdom or elderhood or sagedom is a rabbit hole that gets deeper and deeper and deeper the longer that one stays put. But it's interesting, elder and sage, I don't think they're any more a label that one can place on themselves than ally. I think those are labels that are bestowed on us by those around us. So I look at what's the intention I set. I love how Dan Sullivan says that he wants to live to 156 and he's organizing his life around that. A friend and former coach of mine, Larry Hart, talks about wanting to live to 100 and organizing his world around that. And Steve Hardizan has already determined that his exit date is 4/4/44, April 4th, 2044. I don't know how old he'll be, but there are so many people that plan for what that mark is, reaching that goal. And I joke about being in my back 50 because 100 would be lovely. I'm not as concerned about the number. My intention as I age is to deepen my connections, to elevate my knowledge, to expand my wisdom, to multiply my impact, to amplify, sounds weird, amplify my serenity, magnify my stillness, and earn the labels that I want. And so I wonder, what are your intentions around aging? How will you age? Whatever transformative experience we have of aging, whatever transformative experience you will have around aging is dependent upon your own intention. So what is your intention? What is your intention when it comes to aging? Kevin, I love that. Sage and wisdom are experiences described by those who've had them, not by those providing them. True. And it sounds so simple, right? And that's one of those, Kevin, I love your Peloton name, being versus doing. These are examples of being when one spends time and immerses themselves in the being of it. It's the only way one can become that. So it's the only way one can earn that label, earn that moniker. So how will you earn them? How will you live in a way that allows others to describe you that way? And thank you, David. I missed that before. Yeah, that analogy of Michelangelo, what I loved about it was how simple it is in describing the chipping away of everything that's not authentic. Thank you, Mary Virginia. The answer to how will you live? Remain curious and engaged with the people in the world around me. Ask questions. Seek to know more. Yeah. I think that's something that would serve all of us. I think we get so clear about what we know, so sure about what we know. And what stands in the way of our learning, what stands in the way of our growth is the things that we're sure about, not the things that we don't know. Mark Twain talked about that, if I could remember the quote exactly. But the idea is what prevents us from growing is not what we don't know, it's what we're sure we know. And I think that pretty much describes my 20s. But again, oh, by the way, Tina, who's here on LinkedIn, thank you for joining as well. By the way, to Facebook and on Clubhouse. So if you're ever missing it on one platform, you have other places to go. Aging is not lost youth, but a new stage of opportunity and strength. My God, I love that. Thank you. You may see that in a future episode. Aging is not lost youth, but a new stage of opportunity and strength. I had my first midlife crisis at 20. And it wasn't as much of a crisis as it was a ginormous what the moment. I had a thought that I guess that would have been a quarter or 20% life crisis. I The thought was, oh my God, 2 decades. It was a marker. What have I done? Well, what have any of us done at 20? But it was, what have I done? And if I haven't done anything by now, oh my God, what am I going to be able to do? I'm behind. And that was actually the thought that went through my head. And, it made for a pretty hellacious spiral for several weeks. And the language I used then is different than the language I use now. But the awareness that came to me was, whose rules are those? Those are all made up. And I'm not supposed to know what I'm doing yet. What I'm supposed to be doing is acquiring more knowing. I was right in the middle of my more than 4 years of college, and that was the change. It was what is it that I'm doing right now that's bringing on more knowing. I'm not supposed to know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I'm fascinated now by how many kids that are leaving high school, preparing for college, are freaking out about what they're going to do. Because the thought underneath that is, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Kids graduating in the last couple of years, even before the pandemic, are expected to have 7 different careers. And Kevin can speak to this too. 7 different careers in their lifetime, 4 of which don't yet exist. 2 of the careers I've had since I graduated college in late Reagan didn't exist at that time. I had another midlife clarity at age 40, and it was very much the same language. It was, oh my God, I'm behind. Look what I've missed. Look what I haven't done. Look what I haven't been paying attention to. Holy shit. And it was very much the same thing. I'm paying attention to things outside, not inside. I was paying attention to societal intention, other people's intention, instead of what was important to me, instead of what was important to my marriage and my family. Whatever transformative experience I am to have around aging is dependent upon my own intention. My intention. So whatever it is around how we're socialized and acculturated and educated, we can have those conversations about changing society. It's important to change our internal measures so that whatever we experience is dependent on our intention and therefore our action. And notice when I was talking about age 40, I didn't say midlife crisis, because midlife crisis is what happens to a life left unexamined. When an awareness comes up, when a internal cultural spasm comes up and shakes the foundation, that's nothing more than an awareness, a clarity. If we leave it unexamined, it's when it turns into a crisis. It's when we end up with the losing our companies, losing our marriages, an age-inappropriate person next to us in the convertible, the cliched midlife crisis. But when we allow that clarity to be examined and we move into it and ask more questions, that's when a midlife clarity allows us to chip away more of the pieces that aren't us, aren't true, aren't authentic. And again, to live, love, and lead from there. Yes, Kevin, yeah, it's heavy and necessary weight to carry to decide your path at 20. If you told me 10 years ago what I'd be doing now, I wouldn't even understand what you were talking about. And that's true. My brain 10 years ago couldn't process most of what I would talk to about it right now. And that's the same thing. It's when I was 40 to determine what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, be it 40, 40 or 60 more years, is just as ludicrous. What am I going to do now? Maybe even what am I going to do next? And that's the opportunity. Thank you, Gisela. It's the opportunity to decide what it is that we will do now and decide what we wish to do next. Because whatever transformative experience any of us are to have of aging is dependent on our intention. So this week, as spring is springing for this band around the globe, as spring is happening, what are your intentions? It doesn't have to be an intention about what you're going to do for the rest of the time on this planet. What is your intention about how you will age? Yes. And what is your intention about what you're going to do right now? Next week, next month, next quarter, next year. Whatever transformative experience you are to have is dependent upon your intention. If you don't set one, something will happen. So between now and next week, please join me at facebook.com/group/Mindset Monday and share with me your intentions about aging and what you will choose to do right now. And if you don't want to share it in the private Facebook group, send me a direct message. I'm super curious about how you are setting your intentions. So between now and next week, what mindset will you choose?